What's going on, everyone? So yesterday we had a pretty awesome stream from FFG and they revealed some new spoilers from Twilight of the Republic. Seems to be getting more and more hype as we go through these months here, and we are getting closer and closer to this set, which I am extremely excited about. We're going to talk about a few of the cards that they revealed yesterday, and well, before we do, I want to mention just a thank you to my Patreons. You'll probably see them scrolling across the screen here in just a moment. Well, let's talk about General's Blade, one of the new upgrades from the new set. It's a 3-costed command upgrade. It gives you +3/+3 in terms of stats. You can only attach it to non-vehicle units, and if the attached unit is a Jedi, it gains on attack the next unit you play this phase cost 2 less. So a pretty interesting sort of ability, but it's very comparable to one of the current upgrades that we have right now in Jedi's Lightsaber. Now, for one, they're in different aspects. Jedi's Lightsaber is in Vigilance Heroism. This is in just straight command. So you can play this in your villainy decks if you want, even though it's seemingly a Jedi card, right? Gives you +3/+3 in terms of stats, which is, again, the same stat line as Jedi Lightsaber. Now, from what we've seen out of Jedi's Lightsaber is you can play that upgrade for just the +3/+3 stat line, and it is pretty strong if your opponent can't just immediately deal with that unit. However, the real strength in that card relies in if you attach it to a force unit, you can give the defender -2/-2 when you're attacking them and kind of get these free trades or just free kills on your opponent's units, or just completely knock out some bigger units. In this case, you don't get that. Instead, you get this kind of pseudo ramp where if you're attacking, let's say you've already played this on the previous turn, you essentially get 2 additional resources for another unit that you can play that turn. And you don't need to kill anyone. All you need to do is just attack with this, well, unit that is a Jedi that this General's Blade is attached to. Now, here's the thing with this card. One of the things about Jedi's Lightsaber is that you have so many options earlier on in the game to actually enable Jedi's Lightsaber. You have things like Yoda, you got things like Grogu, which I've seen a Jedi lightsaber on Grogu and it can get pretty nasty pretty quick. You have things like Guardian of the Wills, you have things like Kanan. All of these cards are all Force units. However, this specifically refers to the Jedi tag. And I was just curious, so I was like, okay, let's look up Jedi. How many Jedis do we actually have in the game right now? And you could see here, at least in command, we have almost none with the exception of General Krell, which is a double command Jedi, so it's not even necessarily single command. And we've already seen this card be kind of mediocre, even though it has the Force tag. I guess it has the Force, Jedi, and Republic tag, which are important for set 3. Another card that you might be, well, excited about for the next set that is kind of a sleeper, I suppose, right now, and that's Mace Windu, also has the Force, Jedi, Republic tag. But you notice General Krell, 5 cost a unit, Mace Windu, 7 cost a unit. The other options that we have are like Luke Skywalker, a 7 cost a unit, Obi-Wan, a 6 costed unit, Kanan, 4 costed, and Yoda, a 3 costed. There isn't really any curve potential with this General's Blade where you go like turn 1 Jedi, turn 2 General's Blade, at least right now. As you can see here in the cards that we do have, we also have Anakin Skywalker, which is a brand new set 3 card. So I wouldn't be surprised to see other cards kind of appear that do allow you to curve into General's Blade and attach it to a Jedi on turn 2, and then potentially, and if this is the case, play a Jedi, attach the General's Blade, because it's going to be buffed up. Let's say it's just 2/2 base stat line. It's going to be a 5/5 now, which is very tough to deal with unless your opponent has like Power of the Dark Side. But assuming they just play another unit, for example, you now have a 5/5, which can kill one of your opponent's units, and you get to play a 2 resource play for free, which is really, really quite strong. So if we're able to kind of curve into General's Blade, this could be an upgrade that's really impressive in more aggressive style of decks. I could see this kind of be paired alongside a bunch of like mini units that generate clone troopers. Like you could have this like one big threat, and then while you're at it, you generate a bunch of these smaller clone troopers to kind of support your general style within set 2, as that's kind of the idea, right? Even if you look at Anakin, he has that coordinate on attack, draw a card. So your kind of goal with these decks is to have some powerful coordinate attacker and then support that coordinated attacker with extra units. Heck, you could even put this on like Anakin Skywalker, who's a 6/6 on turn 4 for 5 resources, and turn him into a 9/9 and still get that bonus, which is kind of interesting. But I think the more interesting part is to hope that we're going to see some earlier units. As I mentioned earlier, Jedi Lightsaber is a little bit different. You can kind of see it right here on screen. But if you look up the Force units, well, we actually have a lot more options now. Of course, some of these just have like Force in there, name like Consular Security Force. But if you look like Grogu is a Force unit, you have things like Guardian of the Wills, which is a Force unit. You have things like Mace Windu, as we went over earlier. You have Ezra Bridger, which is an earlier Force unit. You don't really have any like turn 2 Force units all that frequently. You do have the Guardian of the Wills and Grogu, which does happen every once in a while. But you also have so many other Force options that you can kind of construct a Force deck. And if you're running General's Blade, you are hoping to have enough Jedi to actually support it. You don't just want, well, Yoda into Kanan, for example. You're going to want to be playing Yoda, Kanan, maybe Guardian of the Wills, maybe Grogu, maybe Ezra, maybe Obi-Wan, and have it useful. But the on attack trigger gets less useful later on in the game, usually. Not always, but usually, as you can already play your expensive stuff. So it's a little bit different than Jedi Lightsaber, but I think this card could potentially be good, as we've seen Jedi Lightsaber be pretty good. But I will say with Jedi Lightsaber, it has never really been competitive. The decks that are winning with Jedi Lightsaber are more casual. They're not really top tier contenders. And so this card doesn't look that insane. Next one is going to be a new event. It's a 4-costed event, Prisoner of War in Cunning here. And it says a friendly unit captures an enemy non-leader, non-vehicle unit. If the enemy unit costs less than a friendly unit, create 2 battle droid tokens. And then this just reminder text for captured cards. So whenever your units that you use to capture an enemy unit, dies, they get their unit back. So the idea behind this card is, well, you are able to capture something from your opponents. And ideally, you've kind of played a higher cost in units so that you can capture that and then generate some additional value with your battle droids. And then because of exploit, this could even be something that allows you to play another card during this turn because you're able to sack those battle droids in order for you to reduce costs on certain cards. Now, this one I don't think we really need to talk about too much. Unlike General's Blade, which could have some implications if you're able to curve into it, we've seen the kind of restrictive capture cards be very, very, let's just say, not good. And this one's even more restrictive, right? It's 4 resources for 1. For 2, you can't capture vehicle units, which is a huge downside, right? As a lot of the kind of exceptional capture cards that you might be playing, like Relentless Pursuit, actually can capture vehicles, and then you can kind of interact with your opponent's arena. If you're in ground, you can interact with space, and if you're in space, you can interact with ground in some cases. And in, Relentless Pursuit, which is the most commonly played capture card right now, and let me see if I can actually pull that up here. Well, sneak peek for the next card here. If I pull up Relentless Pursuit, which is, again, the card that I could compare to most cleanly because it's the card that we're playing the most, also in Cunning, also an event, and also has somewhat of a restriction on it that has to be the same or less, or in this case, that card says less than. So you're still able to capture anything, but even if you get the battle droids, is that worth it over, the potential shield token, which you do get quite frequently? And heck, this card isn't even played more than like 1 or 2 of in some decks. So this one isn't even that popular. I think this card's too expensive. I think that the restriction of it being that you have to capture something that costs less is actually way worse than Relentless Pursuit, because Relentless Pursuit, you can capture something that costs the same and still get your benefit, which is the shield token. And that's really important because when you're playing this on your event curve or playing this on your 4 resource curve, you're not going to have that many choices to choose from. And yes, I know you could capture an enemy non-leader, non-vehicle unit that costs more, which is a little bit more versatility from that angle. But even then, you're not really interested in using 4 resources usually in cunning to disrupt your tempo and not really get anything out of it or even protect yourself, right? And in Relentless Pursuit's case, it definitely protects yourself from your opponent from just, well, killing that unit and then getting back their card, at least from unit combat. So not a huge fan of Prisoner of War, but always nice to see some more battle droids. And you also saw a sneak peek of it, but the next card we gotta talk about is a 3 resource 4/4 with a pretty heavy downside and a keyword. So he's a 3 resource 4/4 in JEDI. He's an aggression heroism unit. Love seeing some of the cloned named clones, by the way. Not really seeing any specific clone company tags, like 212, 501st, that for example. So I don't know if we're really going to see that in this next set. Although I kind of expected that when I saw Ahsoka and Anakin and not really seeing a 501st tag. But unfortunately, we'll just have to move on from that. This one's a 3 resource 4/4 with raid 1. And when you play JEDI, an opponent creates 2 battle droid tokens. So first off, 3 resource 4/4 is a superior stat line to basically anything that we're seeing in the game. 3 resource 3/5s exist, 3 resource 4/3s exist, 3 resource 3/3s exist. Generally speaking, your aggro decks, if you think about like Sabine Green, for example, are playing 3/5s on 3 resources. They're playing, well, in some cases 3/4s, but depending on the ability, right? And this is kind of like a 5/4, not even just a 4/4 if you're attacking with it. Now, keep in mind that if you are playing this on a curve and your opponent plays a 4/3, then that really stacks up poorly for JEDI because you are essentially trading with their 3 resource play, but you also gave them additional value. Now, the question is this guy going to be viable in a more aggressive deck because he's in the aggressive colors? Well, not just aggression itself, but aggression heroism, which red-green heroism has been the most heavy aggro archetype in the entire format. Yes, we have like double yellow Han, double yellow Boba, but those are more tempo disruptive style of decks that put on pressure and, prevent your opponent from really getting down on the board. These decks with the aggression and command heroism are oftentimes all about getting an early damage and then burning your opponent out. Unfortunately, I have tried 3 resource 4/4s like Wanted Insurgents, for example. Now, I think that Wanted Insurgent actually has a way worse downside in that the bounty to kind of deal some damage to other unit is really, really big. But the 2 battle droids with set 3 also seems like such a massive downside that I don't think it's really, truly worth it. If you think about this, right? If you think about this, let's just type in battle droids here. No, I guess it doesn't come up, but Hellfire? Oh, come on now, come on. There's a filter for the new set. I was trying to look up the brand new vehicle. It's the Hailfire tank. I don't know why I said Hellfire. But the Exploit 2 mechanic, where you're able to defeat up to 2 units you control, and then the card costs 2 less for each unit defeated this way. Let's say you go JEDI. Well, the following turn, should they choose to do so, they could just sack those battle droids that you gave them and then play a 7/6, which is pretty insane. Heck, even with something like, well, let me just pull up Asajj. Oh, come on, it's not a Twilight Republic. There we go. You could be playing, well, a 2/4 for free. For free with the 2 battle droids. So if there is some way to really get some value out of these cards that your opponents are giving you, I guess not necessarily cards, but tokens that your opponents are giving you with the Exploit 2 mechanic. Now remember, you don't just have to defeat droids, but generally speaking, those are the most cheap and useless units to defeat. If there's a way to leverage this exploit, if there's an exploit deck, I think JEDI is going to be unplayable because the extra 2 battle droids just kind of fits in with your opponent's strategy just so well. If they have a situation where, the extra battle droids, you can't really get any additional value from them, I could see this being potentially an okay card. Because remember, if you play this card and you attack for 5 and then, you play your K2 or whatever, they can't actually use those battle droid tokens when this guy comes down. And there's not many things, as I mentioned earlier, that are going to be able to kill it and prevent you from attacking in for at least 5 points of damage, assuming you're curving out here. With the fact that it has such a high toughness alongside power, you're going to be able to get in some early damage and potentially make this worth it. We will have to see. I'm a little bit skeptical of these cards that are going to be creating kind of these droids that fit in with the synergies of the theme for your opponents. Like if I saw this in draft, for example, I would never ever consider this to be a high pick, because just giving your opponent so much material is so difficult to work around. But we will have to see. Again, it really depends on sort of what we're seeing within the new set and the new decks. Not to mention, the other thing that I wanted to say was, if you just look at like General Grievous, for example, that would be awful. If your opponent gave you 2 battle droids, you'd be ecstatic. You just sit there like, yeah, I'm going to give this battle droid token a sentinel keyword and just have you attack that, which is really just quite obnoxious and kind of defeats the purpose of playing these extremely aggressively statted units, because the whole point of them, despite you giving your advantage or an advantage to your opponent, is to get in as much early damage as possible. And if you're fighting something like Grievous, which you just throw these battle droids in front of you as sentinels, then you're going to kind of defeat the purpose of playing Jesse, right? Because he's going to turn into, after you've thrown 2 sentinels in front of him, 5/2, which we've seen those in the game in terms of like some synergies that you could do. So it's just something to consider. You really need to be making sure that when you're playing a lot of these cards, you're not providing a massive downside to your opponent, or rather a massive downside for yourself by giving your opponent a bunch of material. And I think Jesse kind of fills in that category. We will see. I could be potentially quite wrong about this, but I'm just seeing all these cards that specifically synergize with these keywords and or with these mechanics, like Captain Rex. We don't really see what we could do with clone troopers yet, but the whole idea behind this set is to generate a bunch of units, right? And same thing with the villainy set. We're looking at these cards and we're thinking about generating battle droids to sacrifice them. And when your opponent plays a card that generates you more material to sacrifice, that's usually a pretty bad situation for you to be in, as the person who's playing Jesse. But let me know what you think about those cards in the comment section down below. The card I'm most excited about is that General's Blade. I think this card could have some really cool implications if we're going to get more Jedi in the set, and we're going to be able to potentially curve into this. I could see this being a really awesome aggressive start by getting a very powerful unit down early while also deploying more to your board. Because that's one of the big problems with upgrades is you're upgrading, which gives you damage now for less board presence later, usually. And because of that, it can be a little bit tricky to play super early on. But this kind of mitigates that, where you can play these upgrades and they usually refund their costs, or at least this one will, if you're able to attack with it. Anyways, that's going to be the new cards, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching. I'm super excited about the set, and I will see you all for a video tomorrow.